What if a killer terrorizing an entire city sent a letter to the newspaper, and the letter got published on the front page? What if that letter gave the city an exact date and a specific instruction: play a certain kind of music in every home on a single night, and promised that whoever obeyed would live? And what if, on that night, an entire American city actually did it, and by morning, nobody had died? This is the hidden history of the Axeman of New Orleans. Between May 1918 and October 1919, a series of brutal attacks terrorized New Orleans and its surrounding parishes. The pattern was consistent and specific. The attacker targeted homes late at night, almost always Italian grocers and their families. Entering through a back door he'd chiseled open himself, with a tool taken from inside the victim's own home. He attacked with an axe, also usually the victim's own, left behind at the scene. At least 6 people were killed across the string of attacks, with several more surviving severe injuries. The New Orleans police investigated extensively. Suspects were arrested, including at one point a man later executed for an unrelated crime, whose connection to the Axeman attacks was never conclusively established. Some historians have proposed the killings weren't the work of one person at all, but several, loosely connected by method and target, possibly organized crime-related, given how many victims were Italian immigrant grocers during a period of documented tension between Sicilian immigrant communities and organized crime enforcers operating in the city. No single explanation has ever been proven, and the case remains formally unsolved to this day. Then, in March 1919, in the middle of the investigation, something happened that has never been repeated by any other documented serial killer in American history. By the way, if you've made it this far, you're clearly someone who finds the hidden side of history fascinating. If you want more stories like this, hit subscribe. New episode every week. Now, back to the Axeman. A letter arrived at the offices of the New Orleans Times-Picayune. It was unsigned by any name, but the writer claimed direct responsibility for the killings, describing details of the attacks that hadn't been made public. The newspaper's editors, after internal debate, made the decision to publish it in full on the front page. The letter is real. It exists in the newspaper's archives to this day, and its language is exactly as strange as the crimes it claimed responsibility for. The writer referred to himself using supernatural language drawn from the era's popular spiritualist and Gothic fiction, a stylistic choice historians generally interpret as theatrical self-mythologizing rather than a literal claim anyone in the newsroom took as fact. Stripped of that framing, what the letter actually did was practical and specific. It announced the writer's intention to continue killing, and it issued a single, bizarre instruction. On the coming Tuesday night, the letter said, he would pass through the city again. Any household where jazz music was being played, loudly, at the exact hour he intended to strike, would be spared. He would not touch a house filled with music. New Orleans, in March 1919, was already one of the birthplaces of American jazz. The city took the letter seriously enough, or found the excuse compelling enough, that on the appointed night, dance halls across the city filled beyond capacity. Bands that hadn't been booked found themselves playing anyway. Families with no history of owning instruments borrowed pianos, gramophones, anything that could fill a house with sound. Newspaper accounts from the following days describe a city that, by all appearances, spent an entire night making as much music as it possibly could. Nobody was killed that night. Whether that outcome proves anything about the letter's authenticity is a separate question from whether the letter itself is real, and the historical record only confirms the second part. What AI cross-referencing of the original Times-Picayune archive, contemporary police records, and later academic analysis of the case has done is establish clearly what can and can't be claimed with confidence. The letter exists and was genuinely published. That's documented fact, not legend. Whether the actual killer wrote it, or whether it was a hoax written by someone else entirely, a copycat, a prankster, even potentially someone inside the newspaper looking to drive circulation during a period when Axeman coverage was already selling out editions, has never been resolved. No forensic method available in 1919 could have verified authorship, and none has definitively done so since. The attacks didn't stop entirely after the jazz night, though the pattern shifted. Further killings attributed to the same method occurred in the months that followed, with the final documented attack in October 1919. After that, the killings simply stopped. No arrest, no confession, no further letters. The case went cold in a way that has never fully reopened over a century later. Popular tellings of this case tend to lean hard into treating the letter as confirmed proof of the killer's identity and motive. The demon, the theatrical villain, the mastermind who spared a city out of some twisted appreciation for music. That version makes for a better story than the documented reality, which is genuinely stranger. A city terrorized by an unidentified killer or killers, responding to an anonymous, unverifiable letter by collectively choosing to fill their homes with music on a single specific night and getting through it without a single death, for reasons that may have had nothing to do with the letter's supernatural framing at all, and everything to do with an entire community deciding, together, to protect itself the only way it had been told it could. New Orleans still remembers the night. Jazz historians cite it as one of the strangest single nights in the genre's early history, not because of any performance in particular, but because of how many performances happened simultaneously, for a reason that had nothing to do with music itself. The letter is still in the archive. The identity behind it is still unknown. Nobody has ever proven who the Axeman was. Nobody has ever proven why the killings stopped. Look around. History is everywhere.